Hi, friends. Today we're going to be talking about the first group of people that ever showed up in North America. And we refer to these across the board as Paleo Indians. Paleo means old. And these people were located here from about 9,000 BC to about 5,000 BC. That means they first showed up about 11,000 years ago. So let me tell you the story of how they ended up here. If you look at the map that I have here, people first showed up in Africa and made their way up into what is now Asia. Now, the world looked a little bit different than it does now. And one of the reasons why is because we had several ice ages in which the whole world, the whole globe, was so frozen that different things or different landforms would show up built out of ice. And one of those was called the Bering Strait. You can see it right here. It was a tiny little strip of ice that connected Asia with North America. Now, that doesn't exist anymore right now. Perhaps one day, thousands of years from now, if we have another ice age, it will reappear. But there's not a way for us to cross over on land from Asia to North America. There's a big ocean between us. But 20,000 years ago, this Bering Strait did exist, or so scientists think. Now, all of this, friends, is just a best guess. We think that people traveled up into northern Asia and that they were following big animals, animals like the mammoth and the saber-toothed tiger, animals that they could hunt and eat and survive off of, and that those animals maybe crossed the Bering Strait and that those people followed after them. Now, this wasn't one person's lifetime that did this. This was thousands and thousands of years of travel, and that's really hard to wrap our heads around. But in the late Pleistocene, which was the last ice age that our Earth encountered, people crossed over. That's what we do know. And it came into what is now North America. This was about 20,000 years ago, or 18,000 BC. It took them another 10,000 years or so to cross down North America and end up in what is now Colorado. The first artifacts that scientists found showing that people had been here that long were some artifacts that were found in Folsom, New Mexico. Basically, they found a spearhead. This would have been attached as a tool to kill animals. It's made of stone, and you can see that it's kind of carved into the shape of a spear. I have another picture I'll show you in a second of more of a close-up. And it was found with some fossilized bison bones. Now, these bison are not the type of buffalo that we see today. These were much bigger, much more wild, much furrier, and were not quite the same as what we have now. But what was interesting is this spear point was found with some bison bones, and there were marks on the bison bones that made it look as though the spear had made those. And so, really, what scientists realized is that these were human spears, these came from people, and that people had been here 11,000 years ago. That is a long time. Now they started looking around for other artifacts, and they basically found that three different cultures or three different groups of people had lived in what is now Colorado, but also in other parts of the US. The first group they found was called the Clovis culture. These artifacts date back from about 9,000 BC. So these are the earliest ones in Colorado from about 11,000 years ago. And the only things we really know about them is that they ate bison, they ate mammoth, they used spear points to kill them, and they also had some crude kind of blades that scientists think that they probably used to scrape hides to get the meat off of the skin, and bones. And they lived in pretty small groups, but we don't know what kind of houses they lived in. We don't really know much about them at all. Then we've also found sites from the Folsom culture, like I just showed you. We've got a lot more spear points from them, and they look different than the Clovis points. They also had other different tools instead of just spear points and just scrapers. And we've got lots of sites that show that they were living and camping in certain areas. Again, we don't know a lot about how they lived or what they lived in or so on and so forth, but there's evidence that they were here. And then the last group that we've found evidence of in the United States, and specifically in Colorado, is the Plano culture. These people were around about 8,000 BC, so about 1,000 years later than the Clovis culture. And one of the really cool things was there was a site found that basically scientists realized that the Plano people, the hunters, had chased a large group of bison into a ravine. A ravine is like a big kind of, what would be a good word for it? A big ditch in the earth. And basically, they chased the bison, and the bison had no choice but to fall off this cliff into the ravine. And they found a site where 200 bison bodies were found, the bones from 200 bison bodies, along with tons of spearheads, and even actually a couple of people. And they found evidence of some of the bison being eaten. So some of the bodies were taken apart and obviously were not there anymore. And then others at the bottom of the heap were just complete skeletons because the people had gotten enough food and didn't even need all of the bison that they killed. But what was really cool is that scientists were able to find this and really understand how smart these people were, what good hunters they were. And, these people were around like 10,000 years ago doing these things. So when we look at a map of the US, in yellow here are the Plano people. And this is an example of one of the spearheads you would find that's a Plano spearhead, longer, narrower, sharper. And then in the red here are where the Folsom people lived. So Colorado is right about here. The Folsom spearhead you can see is shorter and wider, and it kind of has these distinctive chip edges where they've been kind of worn down on the edge to look in a certain way. So, what we're going to do is we are going to add to our timeline today. So, on your timeline, you have the year 0 here. We talked about all of the things happening before the year 0 are considered BC, and anything coming after the year 0 is AD. So, we're going to start our timeline today. You can put a line here, and we're going to start our timeline at about we'll start it at 11,000 BC. Okay, so you can either type it or write it, but we want to label about 11,000 BC. And then we want to tell what people were here. So these are the Paleo Indians, and these can be the Clovis, Folsom, or Plano cultures. So these are 3 distinctive groups. They all kind of overlap and all are found in Colorado. And we have evidence of that because of spears and other tools that we found, along with kill sites for different animals that they hunted. The last thing that we want to do today is we want to add some notes about the Paleo Indians. So we are going to talk about the fact that they were found in CO 11,000 to about no, that's not right, to about 7,000 years ago. So this is when they were located here in Colorado. Okay. These were three cultures. So again, Clovis, Folsom, and Plano. And we'll mention here about, sorry, I'm going to make this a little wider. We can mention here about what was found. So spears and other tools found in lots of sites across Colorado. Let's make that a little smaller, and we'll put that there. So if you need to catch up with me, I probably typed a lot faster than you are ready for. You are welcome to pause the video anywhere you need it so that you can update your notes in Seesaw. And we will discuss a little bit tomorrow if we can. It's hard because we aren't going to be in person during social studies right now. But in the mornings, I'd like to kind of rehash what we learned about so that we are having some conversation because it's really interesting. And if you want to find out more, you could Google Paleo Indians and lots of drawings and different things will come up, pictures of spears and so on, showing you the different styles. Just remember, this is all best guesses from scientists based on what we've found. So we don't have any writing, we don't have any books saying we were here or somebody keeping a journal. This is from artifacts that we've found that are thousands and thousands of years old.